So I lived out in Washington, D.C. for several years. I was doing studies at Catholic University. And for any of you who are familiar with our nation's capital, you know it's a place where every year a lot of really excited, ambitious, well-meaning young people will turn up, usually right out of college or grad school, and they're ready to set the world on fire. They have the best of intentions. They'll go into many of the government agencies. Well, maybe it's a different story today, but let's go back 10 or 15 years. And they'd go into the agencies and they would just dive right in, wanting to make a difference in the country, wanting to make a difference in the world. And a lot of times, after a while, they would become a little bit frustrated because they'd realize things don't always move at an ideal pace. And many of them, after a year or two, would begin to get burned out. And so I was in a parish, DuPont Circle area, right in the heart of the district, and it was a parish where a lot of these young adults would come in. And I remember one young woman in particular. She'd graduated from the University of Iowa, and she got her dream job. She was with OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, literally going to the White House for her office every day. And she was so excited. And she was assigned to work in healthcare. But ultimately what she was asked to do week after week, month after month, was try to find areas to cut back on the budget. Try to find areas that they could slice off a little bit more from spending. And she would make these decisions that would never be attributed to her, but you'd see it in the headlines of the Washington Post a couple months later that President X, I won't tell you which administration, had made this cut or that cut, and it was really weighing on her because she wanted to make a difference, and she felt like all she was doing was depriving people of more and more health benefits. And so I remember she came to talk to me one day, just really feeling burned out. She was Catholic, obviously, and really wondering, is this what God had asked her to do? And what I asked her to do was to simply make a visit out to a very remarkable institution that's just outside of the district. Some of you may be familiar with this organization. It's called l'Arche, French for Ark. And what these are self-sustaining homes, usually in a big house, for people with developmental disabilities and other residents who don't have those same disabilities. Though you might argue we all have things that we're wrestling with. But they live there full time. This isn't where someone just shows up and puts in a few hours of volunteer service. And there's a very rigorous process whereby residents are received into this community. And so I suggested, this wasn't me, it was the Holy Spirit. I said, why don't you just go over there and check this place out? And she'd volunteered in different ways in college and since she'd been there. But this was a whole other ballgame. And so I remember her telling this story after her first visit. So she's walking up the steps to the house, and all of a sudden one of the residents comes out and just gives her this giant bear hug, and she's wearing her power suit, and they're sort of slobbering all over her shoulder. She doesn't know what to do. She's almost terrified, feels very uncomfortable, but she goes in to dinner, and she has dinner, and then she came back, said, I really don't think that's for me. I'll find something else to do. But a couple weeks went by. I never said anything more about it, but she did go back. And she went through the whole process of applying to be a resident. And eventually she became one. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the result of that, she quit her job and did something totally different with her life. She kept working there, but she'd been transformed in a powerful way. And when she went into the office every week, she did what she could to try to be as fair and helpful in her area, working in healthcare, as she could. So what happened? What was the difference of living in that community? The difference of living in that community was it was impossible for her to be there without being humbled. It was impossible for her to be there without recognizing that she was being asked to draw on a skill set she thought she didn't have. And it began in a terrifying way with the first visit. But there was something there that she had to admit she felt that she didn't feel anywhere else. And I want to be very careful here. This wasn't when she came to talk to me, oh, I feel like I'm really doing something good here. I feel like I'm really making a difference in the world. I mean, that was true to some degree, but what she talked about was the experience of feeling so receptive, a feeling like her heart had opened in a way that it hadn't opened before. She didn't talk primarily about how she could love others. She talked about feeling loved. And I'm mentioning that story because we're hearing all about humility in the readings today. And humility is a funny thing. You can't just decide you're going to be humble. As the old song says, it's hard to be humble. You can't just force yourself to feel that way. But what you can force yourself to do, just as an act of will, is to step into a situation where you are over your head, where you don't have a skill set that will shine, where all you can do in some degree is sit there face to face and be in the presence of another, and ever so slowly allow your heart to open in trust, saying, I don't know what I have to give you other than myself, and allow the other person to do the same for you. I really think that's the takeaway from Jesus' parable. You know, because if you just take it at its face value, it's kind of manipulative, right? Well, when you go in, you know, pick a spot that's lower, because you're just waiting for your opportunity to shine when you get pulled up to the front. Is that really the motivation? But let's just think about the guy who does that. He listens to Jesus, okay, I'm going to take the lower place. Well, if he knows that he, quote, belongs at a higher place, everybody else there is going to know the same thing. And if he really is a little bit full of himself, he's going to be thinking, well, what do they think of me? Why do they think I'm here? Did I drop in status somehow? Did I get in trouble? Am I less than they thought I was? And so just by that one action, he's forcing himself to relook at who he is. He's forcing himself to rethink the relationship that he has with others. So this is just a parable. How about where the rubber really hits the road, when Jesus sends the disciples out? Remember that one? And he says, don't take any extra money, don't take any extra clothing, don't take an extra pair of shoes or a cloak. In other words, what he's saying is, I'm forcing you to go out in a humble state. I'm forcing you to go out where you won't have a security blanket to fall back on. I'm forcing you to go out so that you will only thrive if you're able to say, hey, this is all I got myself, and I'll have to receive from you if this is going to work. And so maybe just an invitation as a little spiritual exercise for all of us in this 22nd week of ordinary time is just to ask yourself, where is there an opportunity in my own life to step into a situation where I can't choose to be humble, but I will be humbled? And for most of us, it's not going to be to go become a full-time resident in a L'Arche community, but we have plenty of opportunities. I'm sure any parent knows what that looks like. What does it mean to be with another in such a way that you're simply saying, I don't have a blueprint. I don't have a ready-made plan. I don't necessarily know what I'm bringing other than love and trust. But all of us have opportunities like that in our lives, if we're brutally honest with ourselves. So maybe just look for that opportunity. It might be as simple as sending a text or making a call to someone where we know it's going to be awkward. Maybe there's something that needs to be healed and neither one of us has had the courage to bring it up, whatever it might be. Take this set of readings as an opportunity and a prompt to go there this week. None of us can choose to be humble, but all of us can choose to place ourselves in situations where all we can do is say, this is all I've got. The Holy Spirit will always show up in those situations.
Thank you for participating in the digital liturgy today. The digital ministry touches the lives of many people, as does almost 80 other ministries here at OLPH. Grateful for the community that connects to OLPH through this digital forum. It's unbelievable how many people are able to access the liturgy and other events because of this ministry. Please consider supporting OLPH. All of your sacrifices help to sustain this parish and to keep moving us into the future. Thank you very much and keep watching.